if you are in transition, you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and you are looking at a new role or you're looking to jump out of that role, I'm going to show you what you want to create, and that is work that you can feel. And you might not need to leave your current place in order to create that. I'm going to give you the main ingredients, and I'm going to show you how to get the power and access to the power that you bring when you actually feel what you do. Now, we've all done this before. We've all had times and places and spaces where we were in love with what we were doing. We were in our stride. We were doing what felt like the right thing at the right time, at the right place, with the right people. It felt like, I don't know, lightning on butter, right? Was easy. It was fast. It was amazing. What if we could actually engineer that? Instead of it accidentally happening, what if that could be engineered? And so I want you to think about the results that you would feel from that if you loved what you did. And it's not just love, it's just there's a feeling that you actually had that was the one you wanted to have. Recently, I've been working with teams doing vision boards, and it's interesting how people typically start out with, well, what do you want? Well, they know what they don't want. They don't want the debt. They don't want to live in the space they're in. They don't want a variety of things. They know what they don't want. So what we typically will do is we'll swing over to the thing that we do want. Okay, I want this house. I want this money. I want this body image. I want this time. What we typically fail to do is we fail to actually ask ourselves, why do we want that? Because it's behind that why, typically, that is what I think is actually the secret here, the treasure. And the treasure is knowing the feeling. Because if you know the feeling, we can bypass the need to actually have the thing before we have the feeling. And I'm going to show you how to do that so that you can work from and not just trying to get to something. Because if you're always trying to get to something, it's always going to feel like you're the guy, a Sisyphus, rolling the boulder uphill, and it never ends. It never, ever stops. Let's talk about the emotions. And so if you were to look at the thing that you want right now, what is the emotion that you would like to feel on the regular basis? This is an emotional chart. It goes all the way from this place of these angry emotions, which are useful, to confident and happy and content. And so take a moment here and look at what's the feeling you'd like to invite into your workspace? What feeling would you like to create? Where would you like to live on this emotional chart? Go ahead and pick a couple. Look through. The stuff on the right is more the happier stuff. The stuff on the left is really kind of the stuff you feel when you're in the fight. And by the way, I'm the guy that likes to stay on the right-hand side, but I've got to tell you, there is some benefit to being in the space and the place, and let's of mad or critical. It's not always negative, right? If you're hurt, why not feel that pain? There are some things we should feel hostile towards, or furious, or offended. I don't know about annoyed, but you get the picture that some of these are not all the negative that they feel like they might be. Some of this stuff actually, it can be harnessed into energy, because if you're mad, you might do something, right? If you're critical, you might change something. So these are necessary, but where do you want to live? Where do you want to live? As a matter of fact, I'm going to flip this a little bit. If you work with clients and work with other people, where do you want them to think of you? Valued? Maybe for some of you it's energetic. You want them to feel inspired every time they're around you. Maybe you want them to feel powerful or hopeful. I always like to look at a couple of those because in the midst of whatever we're doing, if we're not intentional, we're just going to be all over the place. And what I've done this for years, is I've said that if you can be intentional about which of these you want to show up in, that's how people will think of you. You get to actually get an emotional address with other people. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to tell you some tales of love and betrayal. And so to do that, let's dig into the story. Perhaps you've heard of the story of Pygmalion. Or maybe you've heard of the Pygmalion Effect. Pygmalion was someone who was alive in Greek times, and he was a philosopher, he was a leader, and he was lonely. He also happened to be an artist. And one day, he was creating his work, he was doing his art, and he was just into it. He was at the address of the work that he loved. And he was sculpting and he was creating beauty, and he, days into it, weeks into it, forgetting to eat, forgetting to drink, he was in love with what he was doing. And he was building a sculpture of a beautiful woman. And as the tale goes, Pygmalion falls in love with this creation. So the object of his affection was what he was creating. Aphrodite, one of the goddesses, decides, you know what? Piggy's a good guy. Let's go ahead and let's bless him. And she shoots an arrow, and right into the sculpture. And the sculpture becomes a living, breathing being. And her name would be Galatia or Galatia. And they would be in love forever and ever. I don't know how true that is, but I do know that there is something named after it called the Pygmalion Effect. And the Pygmalion Effect says that what you focus on, what you focus on, you create. There's an interesting study that actually proves this. You may have heard of this, and this was back in, I think it was the 70s or 80s. A guy by the name of Rosenthal decided to do a study in schools. And he went in, this is across 25 different schools, 500 students, and he gave the teachers exactly what all of us wish we had when we're dealing with clients or when we're dealing with people we're hiring. He gave them the cheat code. And the cheat code was, I'm going to administer an intelligence test, and I'm going to help you to find what he called spurters. Now, a spurter is someone, the way he defined it, someone who had potential, it just wasn't showing yet. And so if the teacher could focus on that potential, they could cause great things to happen in that, scholastically in that child's life. And so the teachers were all in, the schools were all in, the guy administered the tests and came back with the results. And he told them, hey, these are your spurters. And over the years, not everyone, 95% of these kids ended up being spurters. They ended up becoming better, outpacing the other kids. And really, for the teachers, they thought, well, this just proves the test. But it didn't. You see, Rosenthal actually was just administering a standard first grade IQ test. And then he burned the results. He randomly picked who was going to be the spurters. He told the teachers, these are the identified spurters, and the teachers treated the kids as if that was true. And it's interesting that when the teachers had this high standard, high thought, high belief level in another person, the other person, these kids, actually reached that high standard. Later, Rosenthal would actually be sued for this study by the kids that weren't labeled spurters. You are a Pygmalion. You're a Pygmalion in your life. You're a Pygmalion at your work. You're a Pygmalion with your clients. You're a Pygmalion with your family. You get to focus your attention, your emotion, your desire, and your belief on, you get to choose it. You get to be intentional about that. So, what will you bring about? What will you make happen? And can we use that on ourselves? Because here's what's going to happen. We're going to, all of us, after we get off of this session here, we're going to engage in the workday. And it doesn't matter how much we love who we are, what we're doing, who we're doing it for. There's going to come a time where it doesn't go well. It doesn't feel good. We're going to show you a way to make that easier. And that's going to be the place where we're going to create feeling in all of the places. But let me tell you a story of a few real life examples of people who had love, maybe some betrayal in what they were doing. Once upon a time in the book of Genesis, there was a guy by the name of Jacob. Jacob there were two sisters. He met the one. He fell in love with her. Her name was Rachel. And then there was the other one who in their culture was supposed to get married off sooner. Her name was Leah. And Jacob asked for the second daughter's hand in marriage. Laban, the father, said, yeah, sure, you can marry my second daughter. No big deal. Just work 7 years and then you get her as a wife. Now that was not uncommon back then, and that's exactly what he did. He worked 7 years, and on the wedding night, his wife was veiled very thickly, couldn't see her face, but he was just so in love, over the moon with what was happening, what was going on. He was getting this person that he loved so much now to be with forever as his wife and to have his children. And the ceremony happened, and the honeymoon happens. And as you know, and the honeymoon for them wasn't this long period of time. It was just there was drinking. There was more drinking, and the ceremony finished and it was consummated. And when he wakes up the next morning, Jacob realizes he was deceived. He had been married to Leah, and it couldn't be undone. And so he goes back to the father, Laban, and he says, dude, I said I wanted her, not her. And Laban's like, oh, I understand. Sorry I had to trick you. You can have Rachel, but you need to work 7 more years. And Jacob said, okay, I'll do that. And it says, this is very poetic, but there's some truth to it. It says that those 7 years were like 7 days to Jacob because of his love. So there was some betrayal there. There was some love there. And the reason I share that with you is because so many of us are willing to work for the ugly thing that we don't want, and we're the ones that put off the thing that we do want, the thing that we are connected with, the thing that would engage us, the thing that would make us feel what we want to feel. We think we have to eat our spinach before we can have our dessert. Thank God for parents who went through tough times and people who helped us to live balanced lives. But as adults, sometimes that doesn't serve us. And sometimes affection is actually something that we can listen to. It is a driver, and we were designed for. Let me give you some real people that I've dealt with. Okay, just recently, so a woman was working with, and she's in real estate. She's been doing it everyone else's way, and one of the things that she realized that she loved was she loved people with distressed properties that had that had a love for the feeling of renovating, recreating, making something old into something new. But she felt trapped by the idea that she had to keep doing it the way that everyone else was doing it, because that's how business flows, because that's how you make things happen. And it was almost as if once she created, she stopped serving this thing that was given to her, this Leah, so to speak. And she decided to be open to this thing in this way that she loved the Rachel. And for her, it was renovating, it was recreating, it was making something old into something new for people who respected that. And business changed, life changed, her joy and expression changed, and it was almost instantaneous. There was another man that I worked with that he was tired of doing things the way that he'd been doing them. And he decided, you know what, I want to grow through others. And I don't just want like any regular Joe Schmo. I want high-level people. And so he decided that he would become he called himself the executive recruiter. And as the executive recruiter, he said, I talk to high-level people in high-level ways, and I create interest. And that's exactly what happened. Within 45 days, his business changed. Now, the sad ending of that is his company didn't let him create all of this great abundance that he went out and almost easily created. But he did it. And that's the power that you have and that I have when we move in this direction. There's more. I could tell you more and more. But the main thing is that when we start anything, we start with who? And this is the princess. Who is the princess worth saving? Who is the one that you want to help? Who is the one that literally, when they need help, it's easy to help. You want to show up. For me, this is authentic, well-meaning business people who have hearts to help and who have an openness with what they're experiencing. That's the princess that I love to help. Who's your princess? Who causes you to jump into action? And I know that this may sound, we're using figures of speech here, right? This is in the hero's journey. The hero steps into action for their who. Okay? And back over to where we were going, what do we want our who to experience? What is it that they want to experience? Because the more alive we are to what they want, the more connected we can be with the value that we bring. I'm going to share with you something I'm doing in just a moment, but this is where it gets fun. The other one is, I would say, find the other who. And the other who is you, my friend. The other who is you. Do not be guilty of being the genie. What does he say? Great and powerful being in itty-bitty living space. Don't be someone that's only active and activated for others. I like helping genies because I feel like those are the people, that's actually my people. I love helping people who are strong for others, but maybe they haven't created processes for themselves. But you can't be a genie. You have to not just grant the wishes of others, but also yourself. Here's something that you should consider, something you should look at. This is the emotional spectrum. So according to this study, emotions are thoughts that are as a wavelength. That's what I'm drawing here. And the higher the emotion is on here, the higher the spectrum of the wavelength. There's more there. And I know, listen, some of this stuff can be attributed to the woo-woo people who are going to, we're not going anywhere with this other than saying we want to be as high on this ladder as possible, right? Enlightenment, peace, joy, love, reason, acceptance are much, much better than shame, guilt, apathy, and grief. And you might be someone who's creating a pattern of grief, apathy, shame, guilt, fear in how you serve. So to clarify this, let's imagine you served high level people. where everything was cutthroat. It was on a razor's edge just in terms of what was required and what these people needed and wanted from you. And imagine you had 50 of these people, and every single time you ever saw your phone ring, you had this gut feeling of fear. Did they create it? Yeah, sure. But did you create it? You might be creating that by either your process or the people you serve or the capacity you serve. And the point is that you might be inviting fear into a part of your process. What about guilt? I remember when I was in sales, there were often times where I would sell something and I thought it would work. I believed what I was told by the people in authority, and it didn't work quite the way that they promised. And so I would have a cycle of guilt. And that guilt would push me into ignorance. That ignorance would push me into the bust cycle of my job. And then that would push me into really kind of like anger. And then from anger, I would act. I would take pride and courage. And then I would push and go make another deal and then end up right back down in the guilt and shame part again. And after doing that enough times, I'd find myself in apathy. And so you might be creating a work spectrum that doesn't match really what you want. And so that's actually going to be a question I have for you. We will be talking about how to transition and get to other places at other times. But the question that I have for you right now is to take just a mental tally and say, are these things here the natural response to my current work environment? Whether it be what your corporation puts on you, what your clients put on you, what you put on yourself. A lot of the stuff, by the way, I was putting on myself. Sometimes if I work with the wrong people, even still, I feel this sense of fear. Oh no, and this isn't my coaching business. Can I do this? I think I can, but I don't know. So are you spending a lot of time here? Is this inherent? And if so, is there a shift you can make, whether it's internal or external, meaning the way you frame and think of it, which we're talking about today, or do you need to find a new space, a new place? These are questions for you. But you can't know these unless you are willing to look at the other who, and that's you, my friend. Once you know the who and you know what they have, figure out their what and find a way to repeat it. So your value is solving the problems of your people. And I don't want to say your value. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. Your value is because you're amazing, awesome. You're absolutely, you're one of a kind. But the type of, when we're talking about value and people are going to pay you, they're going to pay you according to the problems that you solve. So back to your princess. What is your princess going through that you can help with? And then from there, this is actually the key. What can you repeat? Because Aristotle says you are not what you do, you are what you repeatedly do. And what I would say is build your repeatable day. Create something that's sustainable. For me, there are many times where I would start a social media venture or even companies. And the truth was, it was a good idea. It just wasn't repeatable for me. Now, it could have been repeatable if I'd worked with others or brought other people in who could repeat it. And that's the whole goal, is to find what is repeatable. Because every time you recreate, you start over with a new momentum. I have a new business idea. Great, you're starting at ground zero again. And that's okay. I've done it lots of times. Trust me. But if you know what their what is and you found a way to repeat it and you can stay there, you get to get the law of what I would say is double-double. The double-double, let's go here. The double-double, well, I'm just going to let this guy explain what the double-double is. Let me share my screen. And optimize. And so hopefully you can hear this. I'm just going to hit play. We're going to watch a few minutes of this, but this guy talks about this is what happens when you are able to find the thing and stick to the thing. I'll turn it up.
If you take a look at McDonald's has a doubling speed of 4.2 years. And consistently throughout the last 60 or 70 years, since it was started in 1954, so it's coming up on 70 years, it's actually doubled its footprint every 4.2 years. And when you go from 1 restaurant to 2 restaurants, that's not a big deal. But when you go to 2 to 4, we're growing. 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32, 32 to 64. And if you actually take the number of McDonald's that are in the world right now and just take every 4.2, you halve it, you actually see the actual progression of McDonald's. McDonald's actually halved and doubled about every 4.2 years. Nike's done the same. They have a way of running their business that creates a doubling speed that's consistent. Facebook was doing a doubling speed of every 9 months with the way they were doing things. So what we're looking for is a way of doing business that has a very high doubling speed attached to that way of doing business. The more you do things in the linear world, the slower the doubling speed. The more things you do things in the digital world, the faster the doubling speed. The more that you show up consistently and powerfully, the faster the doubling speed. The more you change your message and change who you are and change to meet the marketplace, the slower the doubling speed.
So good.
The businesses that have the best doubling speeds show up powerfully and consistently again and again and again and again. I'll give you
Show up powerfully and consistently again and again and again.
Let me give you some examples. The most successful sports car is Porsche 911, and it's the only sports car of all the sports cars that made a particular way of showing up, and they just show up. Like a Porsche 911 today is a evolution of a Porsche 911 in 1963, right? Anyone who was in 1963 could get teleported to today and go, hey, I think that looks a lot like a Porsche 911. There's no other sports car like that. And it's the most profitable and successful sports car of all time. The Fender Stratocaster guitar. Mr. Fender creates that guitar, and it's the most, and he doesn't mess with it. He shows up powerfully and consistently with a Fender Stratocaster. Tabasco sauce. They invent that hundreds of years ago, and they say, we've got our recipe, and we're just going to show up powerfully and consistently over time, right? And we're just going to go, we are Tabasco sauce, Tabasco sauce, Tabasco sauce, Tabasco sauce, and they just exponentially took over the whole world. You get Tabasco sauce everywhere.
So the power of the double-double comes from your consistency. So let's turn this into clients. And you think about how hard it took you, how much work you put in to get 2 clients. And you feel like it was hard, you feel like it wasn't worth it. If you put the same effort in, you end up getting 4 clients. You've doubled. It feels like okay, but then when you put that much more work in, you're not getting 2, you're getting 8 and 16. And so the point is that if you can maintain consistency, you find that place of consistency, you end up in the better space. Most of us adapt to the market, which I'm a big proponent of and a big criminal of. Innovation is good, but finding your address is better. Finding the emotional address, finding the service address, finding all of those things and knowing who you are and knowing where you're working from, that is a key. The double. Once we know what that is, once we know what we can double, what produces the result for them, then we say, how much of that can I do? How much effort can I give towards it? Don't violate this guy, this gal. Step into it and you give the what a win. Simply put, you put it on your calendar. Whatever is important, you put it on your calendar. This isn't a time management course today, but we'll cover that in another session. But whatever is most important, do that first. Whatever is least important, you put it on there, but it's not we don't put it first. The top things, if you are a business, should be IPAs. IPAs are income producing activities. Or you can do JPAs, joy-producing activities. Either of those two things, that's what should be number one. If you're working for another company, you may not have income-producing activities for you, but my question is what is the income-producing activity for them? What is it that you do that's your moneymaker? You got to shake the moneymaker. Give it a win. Put it on your calendar. Put it in your space. And that's actually what we're going to talk about next. But you got to give the what a win. So to back up, for you to have work that you can feel, know the emotional. Let me move this up so I can shrink it here. Know your emotion chart, right? Or figure out the emotion you want. Find out who you love and determine to do whatever it takes to serve that person. Start with your who. Remember you and the place where you want to be. Call out the greatness as Pygmalion did. Fall in love with what it is that you do. Figure out your people and what it is that they want. And find a place to live in it so you can double. You get that double momentum as you continue to go on. Focus on your IPAs, your JPAs, your income-producing activities, and your joy-producing activities. And then, this is the final thing, because all of this, like we have, this is the plan. Now is going to come this thing that, right around here, it's going to come the action. And it's going to make you feel like sometimes you don't feel like working. Sometimes you'd rather eat potato chips. Sometimes you'd rather run and hide. When we have 8 children, and sometimes their mom would allow them to, instead of facing up to things, to basically hide and not face it. And what I've always said is, listen, we're always practicing to be who we're going to be. Our kids are always practicing to be the future version of themselves. And so if they're practicing, we cannot allow them to always back up, to have a sick day, to call a timeout. And sometimes that's what they need. Listen, timeout, rest, get, back up. All of those things are great. It's not great when it's your moment. If you were supposed to speak on stage, but you feel anxiety or you're a little queasy, you have hundreds of people counting on you, but you don't show up because you didn't feel it. That doesn't work. And that's not what we're called to do. So I am going to tell you, though, we're going to have these moments of conflict. We're going to have moments where we're looking at a giant. There's something in front of us that just feels like we're not enough. We can't do it. And you're going to find the moments where actually some of these lower end things start happening. You either are going to feel like hurt, hostile, furious, offended, ashamed, insecure. You're going to feel some of this, or you're going to feel like this lower part of the spectrum here, where it's those places, and even still, we have to act. And if you act as though something can happen for your benefit, it's interesting what that brings about. But I will say this, right? This is a Pygmalion effect. When you're doing the thing, who you're being is more important than what you're doing. So you could be doing the same thing. Let's just say paying the IRS. And you could feel guilt and shame for sure, right? I haven't paid them. I'm behind. I feel guilt and shame. You could also feel anger. If you watch the news, lots of people feel angry. You also can feel pride. You can feel courage. You can feel willingness. I don't know if love is possible, but maybe. You can feel joy. You can feel peace. Can you feel enlightenment? I haven't been there myself, but it is possible. How do we do that? That's the secret I'm going to show you now. We've taken a long ways to run up to this. We can do that with the reframe. We can do that with the new story. It's not always what you do. It's who you are when you do it. Who you're being when you're doing the thing is more important than the thing you're doing. Years ago, we were finishing up a trip to Mexico, and we were kind of getting close to broke. We had been traveling for years around the world, or Mexico and in America, and here we were. It was time to come back. Now we put what was for us a large deposit down in the house. We paid a deposit the first month, the last month, for a home that we were staying in. And Maria, with I forget Casa something. Maria was supposed to give us our deposit back, and like another part of something. We had like 2 deposits that we had put down that we were supposed to receive back, thousands of dollars. And at first we were like, she's not giving it to us. Okay, I'm so angry. And then we're like, but she probably will give it to us. No, she wasn't going to give it to us. We were here. She was there. There's no repercussions that she would ever face for not giving us our money back. And she just wasn't. She acted like she was, and she never did. For a while, I was angry. Actually, it's funny. I found their website, and it was a domain that was up for sale. And I almost, from that lower end of the spectrum, I almost bought the website and for $10 and put all of the bad stuff that they'd done to us and probably to others, and how they were rip-off artists and all of this stuff. And I felt, you know what I felt like? I felt like the person who would be exonerated through political anger. And I felt that. It was real. What we decided, and actually what changed our world and our lives, was that we would not do that. We would hope for the money, but in our hearts and our minds, count it as though we'd given it to her as an offering. Hey, she needs it. And in our way, we were giving it. No, but she was taking it. No, but we were giving it. There was no, it's interesting. Immediately, there was no anger. There was no, all of these negative feelings were hurting. We were doing the same thing, by the way, which is nothing. We couldn't do anything. But the difference of what it made was awesome. We were free from that situation, and we could step into another one. In our financial situation changed pretty rapidly after that. Another time, we had some old bills to clean up, and this was for old bills, just like odd little things. An old veterinarian bill was one of them. An old gym membership that we didn't feel like we should have to pay because we told them there were things that we let it ride. We didn't care, and it was on our credit record. And there were new things we wanted to purchase, but our credit score wasn't exemplary at the time. And so what we would do was we began, there were a few things. We began to make payments. There may have been an old, I don't know, some other things, a few bad debts. And as we began to make payments on these things, we didn't make a payment that was a cap bill. We said, that's our house bill. That's us paying our mortgage. This is us paying for the new car we're going to get. This is us paying. And so we actually, even though we were paying one company, we reframed it as though we were doing this for ourselves. And believe it or not, it changed everything. Everything. It's a reframe. And you can use this too when you step into whatever you're doing and you're faced with whatever you're facing. And you can tell the story to yourself of why you're doing it. If you feel like you're doing it because you're forced to, that's disempowering. If you feel like you're doing it because you have chosen to, that's empowering. I have to go to this meeting. I'm choosing to go to this meeting. Find a real reason to choose it. There was a scripture that I love that if you are compelled to go 1 mile, which the Jewish people were forced to do, anyone that was under Roman tribute was forced to do. You had to go by law, carry their stuff for a mile. But Jesus said, go the other mile, go the extra mile. So if anyone asks you to go 1, go the extra mile. I'm going to give you an interesting tool that I'm in the middle of deploying for myself, because I've noticed there are certain things that I've stopped. And I'm wondering if the framing wasn't strong enough. And so I'm going to let you in on one of my reframes. So for those of you who are still here, I'll show it to you. But the main thing is we have to have a reframe. We have to have the new story. I like to use scripture for it. That's how I reframe things. But the main thing is you need to feel it. Feeling is like the accelerator of all belief. Feeling is. Let me move these out of my way so I can find I'm going to show you what I've done. And this is what I'm doing in my workspace. In my workspace, I'm putting up this new vision board. Now, you guys have seen my old ones. They typically have I've years of these things with all kinds of things. And I've decided that there's something, I might want to bring the monkey up here. There's something I just wanted to, I wanted to simplify, and I wanted to create this feeling for myself. And in a conversation not too long ago, actually my wife, who helps me to connect with these things, she said something, and the word resonated, and I'm not going to go into the meaning and all of that stuff, but we talked about, like, what if I was the treasure bringer? Because that's how I feel like I am. What would change then? And I have a few initiatives that I want to do from the framework of being the treasure bringer. What do I want to do? Well, I've really been putting off this YouTube thing, and I have this kid here, Cole, who is now combining his brilliance with all of the stuff that I do to actually get me there. I think that if I have 2,000 people, that's not the end point, but I think I can get there. I think I deserve that. I can get 2,000. And if I have 2,000, I know that there's other benefits that are going to come from that. Here you see the School of Professional Design. I still have some work to do to get to that founders club. I have 100 people that I want showing up to these meetings. Right now, we have usually not that many, right? It's a dozen. And we have a couple dozen enrolled, and that's important to me. These are the ways that I'm going to do it. There's newsletters. There's the way I teach and show up, and this is me speaking. There's this quoted thing. I have been not. It's a way to get quoted in national news media. I haven't been super faithful to that. But if I do these things as the treasure bringer from these I ams, and that's me doing a TED talk, and that's a Treyu writing. I forget his name. Gosh, how do I forget his name? I'm the treasure. And so I wrote out my I ams, and this is my framing, how I'm framing everything. So every time I'm teaching a course, I'm teaching it from that perspective. Every time I'm writing a newsletter, I'm writing it from that perspective. Every time I'm doing the quoted, I'm doing that from that perspective. Whenever I create a YouTube video, I'm doing it believing this. Every call that I make to create appointments to go speak, I'm doing it believing this. This is my frame. And if I don't believe that enough, I go to Scripture, right? And all of these things I can say with heartfelt belief and passion. And because of that, and I've done this again, this is what I've done in the past. What's your version of that? Where this is going to be at is it's going to be in my space here. So that, and here's the last one, but it's going to be here in my space so that whenever I'm about to do the thing where I feel smaller than, less than, not able, maybe I don't even feel, maybe it's not even that, maybe I feel anger, or I feel like one of those lower end things. I'm giving myself a trigger, a play bigger trigger to look at, to respond to, and to reframe it so that my action becomes a response to a new belief instead of an old one. The reason you're where you're at and where I'm at has to do with action taken from belief. You're where you're at from your previous actions taken from your previous beliefs. What I'm saying is alter the belief that goes with the action, and you will hack in to the double-double You will hack in to the growth that you want, and you will find that you are not only more valuable, but you're more joyful.